Hello and happy Tuesday. I am sick as heck, but I have my water, I have my Mucinex, and I have my tea. So I'm going to get through this because I have some important things to share with you today. Today, I want to talk about my favorite topic in the world, sex. And partners, right? Is having sex too early in a relationship going to dictate the longevity or the happiness of that relationship? Does it matter? I have been of the mindset that I feel like if you're meant to be with somebody, it won't matter if you have sex with them too early or, you wait or you don't, I've never had the thought process that it was going to matter in the long run if you had sex with somebody too early. So I want to preface this episode that I'm very neutral on this, and I'm just here to share what I've researched and what my theories are on this. Because either way, I'm still very neutral on the matter. I feel like there's no real rules that we can apply to this because every situation is unique and different. And we really don't know how something is going to be. And in my head, I sound very congested. So if you think I sound congested, in my head, I sound just as congested. So let's get started. Some of the common issues that we tend to run into in dating is, we've heard it time and time again from, well, mainly, I don't know if all of you, because we all have different parents, but from like old school adults. So people our parents' age or our grandparents' age regarding how dating is supposed to be. It's easier said than done when it comes to trying to follow, these rules that our elders have put in place to formulate a successful relationship. But to do that, we have to break down the dynamics of how relationships were when, our grandparents were young versus how they are currently. There's that long-standing debate on how dating is fundamentally impossible in current day as a single person and how it's only projected to get worse with the swipe left, swipe right culture. The easy access through social media and the idea of endless quote-unquote other options. Not to mention how, allegedly, the dating pool only becomes worse as we age up. And this is a completely gender-neutral belief, by the way, because both men and women equally feel that the older they get, the more fucked they are if they're still single. Let's break down the dating culture of our elders, our grandparents or our parents even. Typically, the way it would go is you meet somebody, they formally begin to court you. And for those of you that don't know what courting is, basically dating, right? They start taking you out. They start, showing you around. And, maybe, you meet each other's family, whatever. You become public soon thereafter, especially if they're formally courting you, right? So your peers and your families know, like, oh, they're going together, right? Sex typically is not part of the equation until marriage in this scenario. It is suspected that, heavy petting may or may not have been a thing, but we all know our grandparents are they're going to take that shit to the grave. They ain't saying shit. But either way, it wasn't entirely common in the way that we currently view it. So, our version of heavy petting is probably extremely different from theirs. And typically, at this juncture, it's very, like, candid. It's very serious. Like, Mary Jane and Jack are going to be like, you know what? I'm dating you because I have the intention of marriage. I want you to be my wife and or husband. So they were more candid and it was very obvious. It wasn't really something that many needed to talk about, but it was like a thing, right? It's like if you're dating me, if you're courting me, if we're public, then the whole intention is like you're planning on being my husband, right? Like you want to spend your life with me. And right now we have to look at how children were expected to grow up quickly and raise a family, And for example, my grandmother was 16 when she met my grandfather. I think my grandfather's 2 years older than her. So he was like 17, 18. And, they got married when my grandmother turned 20. So they were back and forth around that time. I'll have to, tell you the full story about my grandparents because it's actually kind of funny. But, they they basically got married soon after they became official. Like it was like, I'm 20, I'm an older gal, like if you want to go with me, then you better marry me. And that was kind of the expectation set from my grandmother to my grandfather. My grandfather was like, damn, I love this woman. I need to keep this woman in my life. So they got married. Still married, still happily, exploring each other's likes and dislikes. Hilarious couple. Now, let's shift over and look at how we date now, right? You meet somebody, maybe you go on 1, 2 dates. 3 is like, oh my God, things are starting to heat up, right? And then usually, not always, but usually in between that 1, 2, 3 dates, sex becomes a thing. You guys end up fucking each other. And who can blame you? Because, you have chemistry with somebody, you're just like, I would like to, jump on it, ride that pony, right? And again, nothing wrong with that. Nothing is usually defined in these situations. So it's not like after you have sex, you're like, okay, this person's my boyfriend and or girlfriend. So after sex happens, it's just like, what are we? And the thought process is like, we're not going to put a label on it. No labels. I'm trying to keep everything cavalier because I don't really know what I want. Sometimes, every situation is different. I'm kind of joking when I say that. But, nothing is typically defined in this case. I don't think I've ever heard of a situationship where, sex happens for the first time with somebody and then immediately the relationship is defined. Like, oh yeah, we had sex, so now you're my girlfriend or now you're my boyfriend. And from there, things either proceed and evolve into a relationship or it ends and you go your separate ways. So it's simple, but not because, we're dealing with chemicals and emotion in the brain. And I'll get to that. I mean, can anybody really spot the difference here? Question mark, question mark. I've talked to a lot of people my parents' age who do genuinely believe that when people have sex too early in the discovery phase, that it becomes the issue. The fact that, our generation or my generation jumps into sexually gratifying activities too quickly can, it could be a problem, right? Based on the successfulness of relationships. And again, this is a case-by-case basis. It's not the same for everybody. In an article by the Institute of Family Studies, 2 different studies were published mentioning that statistically, the longer a couple waits to have sex, the more successful a relationship is long-term after marriage. The first study was done around 2010 by the American Psychological Association's Journal of Family Psychology. And it involved a sample of around 2,000 and some change married individuals who participated in an online couple assessment. They found that the longer a dating couple waited to have sex, the better their relationship is after marriage. So this was done off of a study, controlled study of 2,000 married individuals. In fact, couples who waited until marriage, they found, to have sex report a higher relationship satisfaction, around 20% higher. Better communication patterns, around 12% better. And less consideration of divorce, 22% lower. And better sexual quality, about 15% better, than those who started having sex early in their dating. For couples in between, those numbers, those who became sexually involved a little bit later in dating. So not at the very beginning and not, at the marriage stage, right? They still had benefits, right? But they were just half as strong. And, this was, the effects of compatibility or restraint, the effects of sexual timing on marriage and relationships. Later, because I mentioned they posted 2 studies. They had 2 different studies. A secondary study was done by Sharon Sassler and her colleagues at Cornell University. They also found that the rapid sexual involvement had adverse long-term implications for relationship quality. They used some data from the Marital and Relationship Survey, which provided information on around 600 low to moderate income couples living with minor children, and the study examined the tempo of sexual intimacy and subsequent relationship quality in a sample of married and cohabitating men and women. Their analysis suggested that the delaying of sexual involvement is associated with a higher relationship quality across several dimensions. They also discovered that the negative association between sexual timing and relationship quality is largely driven by a link between early sex and cohabitation. Specifically, sexual involvement early in the romantic relationship is associated with an increase in likelihood of moving, too quickly and, into living together, which in turn was associated with a lower relationship quality. And this finding, supported a different hypothesis of sexual involvement that led to unhealthy emotional entanglements that ended up, showing that it made ending bad relationships more difficult. Sassler and her colleagues concluded after the secondary study that adequate time is required for romantic relationships to develop in a healthy way, quote unquote. Simply put, people, you have a better chance of making good decisions in dating when you have not become sexually involved with your dating partner. I have a lot of different thoughts on this. This is just, like I said, I'm neutral on the matter. I don't like to put rules or regulations on things. I like to go with the flow of how things are going. But I do think that the hormones that release when we have sex have a lot to do with this. The happy hormone. It could be as addictive as any on the drug market. Or on the market drug. On the drug market. So it can be as addictive as any drug on the market, that we take for pain or, anything like that. More specifically, right, the hormones like the endorphins and the oxytocin that are released during sex. These specific chemicals, from what I'm finding in research and other readings, reduce that logic when choosing a partner. It's safe to say that, well, sex is amazing and sex is great. I love sex. When you're looking for a, serious relationship with a long-lasting partner, right? Trying to find somebody that's, you want to be in your life for, maybe longer than a few weeks or months. It's important to actually look at the qualities of a person with a clear head. And sex can kind of jumble that. It's like putting on a rose lens. So it's just like, I'm speaking from a woman's perspective, right? It's just like, man, I love that dick. And then you're just like not looking at anything beyond of the person, like what's their humor like? How do they talk to me? How are we when we spend time together when we're not having sex? Those are very important things to look at. Like, what exactly do I like about this person? That's why it's typically suggested when you're actually dating and getting to know somebody, it's important to just get into situations with that person. Figure out like, what do I like about this person, if anything at all? Now, I know a lot of you are very much opposed to this ideology of quote unquote waiting for sex, right? Especially when you're really feeling somebody. I actually had this conversation with my aunt a few days ago. And she made a lot of solid points regarding the longevity of relationships. I really don't think there, like I said, are any hard hard fast rules when it comes to dating, because I really do believe that if a connection is meant to happen, the shit is going to happen. You know, um, am I one of those people that believe in the aspect of fate? Yes, I would say I believe in fate. I'm a little bit superstitious. I believe in fate. However, though, it is worth mentioning that the chemicals in our brains and the effect that sex has on your brain can actually negatively impact the progression of the right types of relationships. The actual relationships that we're seeking. If you're at the stage in which you feel you're capable of seeking and keeping those types of relationships. Because I want to preface, I should have prefaced this, but, before I said everything that I said, but I'm going to say it now. I don't think that sex is the enemy here. It's not the big bad villain that's keeping us from, happy relationships. The sex isn't the problem. But I do think that it's kind of like, inhaling a big pile of cocaine and like not seeing things correctly, because you're on a high when you have sex with somebody. It makes you feel good. You have that rush of endorphins. You have that oxytocin kind of fucking running through your fucking brains, and you're lifted. Like, I feel like most of you know this song. I guess we'll see. But you know that song, Sugar Sugar, right? He's like, Sugar Sugar, how you get so fly. You got me lifted higher than the ceiling. Ooh wee, it's the ultimate feeling. Come on. All right? He's talking about that oxytocin. But I do think, that, trying to tackle why we're so willing to jump into sexual situations is worth looking at, right? When you're actually genuinely trying to get to know somebody. And I don't mean a situationship, all right? I have to say that, plain and simple. I'm not talking about a situationship. I'm talking about a specific situation or sorry, a specific relationship that you are trying to find, right? And you know what? Fuck it. If you're looking for a husband or a wife, then be straight up. It's just like, listen, I'm trying to find daddy. Like, I'm trying to find my wife. I'm trying to find the future mother of my children. Be honest about what it is that you want, and fuck everything else. If somebody is going to make you feel weird for saying that, it's like, no, I'm trying to date seriously because I'm trying to see if like I can find the mother of my children, my future children, or find the future father of my children. And if somebody is like, oh, that's weird, then it's just like, okay, then we're not meant for each other, homie. Like, and you just go, there's a lot of fucking people in the world, okay? So try not to get too hung up on, that kind of shit. But, my best guess for that fear, right, of getting to know somebody without jumping into sexual situations, and I talked to my friend Chicken Tendies about this, right? When I told him, like, yeah, if I've had a problem with that where I, like, jump into sexual situations because it's uncomfortable to, like, actually get to know somebody and let them get to know me. So it's like, it's sometimes in hindsight, right? It feels like it would be easier to get to know somebody if the sex is already off the table. Like, okay, we've already tackled this huge, like, big thing that's causing anxiety of, like, am I going to like you sexually or am I not? We got it off the table, so now we don't have to worry about it. So now you can get to know me for who I really am. But, that kind of works against people in a lot of ways. So I feel like that the big thing, the big tamale, is that intimacy can be scary. Especially in this world where a large portion of us have crippling anxiety and depression. Letting someone get to know the intimate and uncomfortable parts of you is scary, right? My biggest thing when I was letting people get to know me is that, like, I get, like, terrible car sickness. Like, and I always joke around with people. I tell them, like, if you could put my car sickness in, like, a gun and shoot it at people, like, shoot, like, microwaves of my car sickness at somebody, like, it would be a crowd debilitator. People wouldn't really be able to... people wouldn't be able to function, all right? My car sickness would be like fucking weapon of mass destruction. But, when I say and when I mention intimacy, I do not, and again, some of you might not know this, so I'm going to say it now. I do not mean fucking, all right? Or having sex or heavy petting. I mean intimacy. eye contact, having very deep conversations, being slightly embarrassed around the person, building certain moments in your life that are important. We do this with friends and family. Like I remember like my most embarrassing moments with my best friend, right? And it only brought us closer because now it's like I don't fucking care if she knows that I have like debilitating car sickness, and if I get like car sick around her and I'm like fucking dying in the back seat, right? Like she already knows. It's not embarrassing for me anymore because of all the situations that I've been in with her. So that's the goal of any relationship. And this is with, friends, family, and romantic partners or romantic interests. Letting them get to know you like you let your friends get to know you. I mean, last I checked, you're not letting your friends go down on you. I mean, I don't know what kind of friendships y'all have, but for me personally, like, I don't remember the last time I was just like, hey, friend, would you like to give me oral sex? Like, so I can get to know you better. So think about it. Try to think about it in those terms. When you're trying to get to know somebody, obviously there's going to be some differences when you're getting to know somebody romantically, right? There's going to be some fundamental differences in that type of connection, right? But try to think of it as something along the lines of, I want to get to know this person. I want to know what they are like in uncomfortable situations for them. I want to get to know what they are like in X, Y, and Z types of situations because I think that that's important, right? So try to see, the exploration of relationships like that. The fact of the matter is, though, that none of us are perfect. And a lot of us have a lot of unresolved issues in our lives and a lot of non-confronted things that typically come up when a new relationship comes hot to the table. I know I do. And I've slowly been realizing, especially this year, that a lot of my, me personally, a lot of how I interact in relationships that are platonic, romantic, or familial are, sometimes not the healthiest. I can admit personally that it's been very difficult for me to simply be and remain authentically vulnerable without obsessing about everything that I might be doing wrong. This is due to a number of factors connected to childhood trauma and unhealthy introductions to items within my earlier stages of development. So recognizing and facing these items about yourself is a great way to start figuring out how you can reprogram yourself to create healthier relationships. And how you interact with, approaching those types of relationships. Again, it's important to realize, again, we are not perfect. We all have our own little secret battles on the side, our little side quests. Every year we develop and interact with new people and we grow and we learn more about ourselves and how we want these interactions to be. Relationships are beautiful things. I think people need people. It's amazing to create and cultivate and successfully retain healthy and loving relationships with friends, family, and a potential partner or partners, depending on what you're into. When you feel like you're not alone in overwhelming situations, like you have a team in your corner to help you, it's very empowering. Asking for help, asking for advice, being open, being honest, remaining non-judgmental, it's a great practice. And consistently trying to keep and hold myself to the standard of if it's not nice, don't say it at all. I know I slip sometimes and I say things out of like frustration or hurt. And that's something that I am consistently trying to bring myself out of because I realize that, it's not nice. And especially when you say it to people that are important in your life, it can have a large impact. And I remember every specific incident that I've done that and I've regretted it. So that's why it's, I'm consistently reminding everybody at the end of each episode, again, to be kind, not only to yourself, but to others. We all have circumstances. We all have ego. And sometimes we'll fuck up and we'll say mean things and we'll hurt people. And when we feel hurt. I know I spoke about this in earlier episodes about how forgiveness doesn't always mean you'll be perfectly okay and on a talking basis with somebody. That's okay. But moving on and learning your lesson on the weight of your words and actions, is great. because we just don't live in a world where we can unring a bell or unsay some words. Sometimes life can be very messy. So try to remain patient with yourself and try to see that every situation is a chance for you to learn and grow based on the outcome, right? And, it'll teach you how you can heal from certain circumstances and move better to a better state of thinking or an evolved state of thinking. I love you guys. Have an amazing week. Hopefully I don't get sicker. I know that my congested ass, finally got through this episode, so I'm happy. I will see you guys next week if I'm not dying of congested. If I'm not dying of congestion next week, I'll see you guys then, because I'm on break. I mean, again, I'm sick as shit, and hopefully it'll go away, but, I'm just going to inhale tea and water. We'll see what happens. Maybe inject some vitamin C into my life. I love you guys. Have a great rest of your week. Bye-bye now.